Okay, well, my topic is mindfulness. I almost couldn't remember the word mindfulness. So, um, and you know, I was telling my small group that I ended up with mindfulness because it was the only one left, and I was the last one to sign up. And and I have always been confused about mindfulness. I had a friend who um, had to do mindfulness with her therapist because she was having a nervous breakdown. And it's really interesting, and reading mindfulness in the context of the Eightfold Path is, I think all the other topics of the Eightfold Path rely on mindfulness. And so, it's a pretty important one. And what I know of mindfulness is that it's being in the present, being aware of what's going on right now in the present, and not being judgmental, and also not thinking about, oh, what happened in the past, and or what's going to happen in the future, worrying about what's going to happen in the future. And it is the three things that are on the Eightfold Path are wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. And mindfulness is part of the mental discipline. And you can be mindful in meditation. We can do mindfulness when we're meditating, or our mind can wander off and go in some other direction. But you know, uh, it talks about the breath, breathing. And one of the things I read, or a few of the things I read, mentioned, do a long breath in and out, and then do a short breath in and out. And I've been practicing that in some of the meditation that I'm doing to see if it's different. But and and also it says that the Eightfold Path is to relieve suffering. And so mindfulness is to relieve suffering. And, and I read some things about that, but one of the questions I would like to ask to the group is, how does mindfulness relieve suffering? And, but one of the things I was telling, Shokai loaned me the book, The Snow Leopard, and it was really interesting because I've read The Snow Leopard before, and I wasn't involved in Buddhism at all when I read The Snow Leopard. And then this time, it's like it's a totally different book than I read before. But at one place, he talks about mindfulness. And so I kept the book longer than I should have because I wanted to use it for this talk. But and he talks about mindfulness when he's climbing up a mountain in the snow, and he said, my foot slips on a narrow ledge. In that split second, as needles of fear pierce heart and temples, eternity intersects with present time. And so then he talked about what is exhilarating is to extend this acute awareness into ordinary moments, in the moment by moment experiencing of the wolf, which, finding itself in the center of things, has no need for any secret of true being. And so then he talks about the precision, openness, and intelligence of the present. The purpose of meditation practice is not enlightenment. It is to pay attention even at unextraordinary times, to be of the present, nothing but the present, to bear this mindfulness of now into each event of ordinary life. To be anywhere else is to paint eyeballs on chaos. I love that term. And so he says, when I watch blue sheep, I must watch blue sheep, not be thinking about sex, danger, or the present. For this present, even while I think of it, is gone. So I really appreciated that little part on mindfulness. And I read Thich Nhat Hanh on my mindfulness, and mindfulness is the seventh of the eightfold path, but he puts it like third because he thinks it's so important. And so I think I'm just going to end with that, and I have a few questions that I wrote down so I wouldn't forget them. One thing that they talk about right mindfulness, just like right everything else, and I wondered if there's such a thing as wrong mindfulness. And and Takeo and I have talked about that a little bit, so I thought, well, I should bring that up. And then I wanted to ask, how do each one of you practice mindfulness? And what is the value of mindfulness in everyday life? And then how does mindfulness end suffering? So I would just kind of like to open it up and see what people have to say and open it up to discussion.
Well, I'd like to answer the simplest of that, which is how does mindfulness end suffering? I notice a complete and total, I have noticed how lack of mindfulness causes infinite suffering in my case, because I'll notice that I pick something up, I carry it someplace else, I'm not paying attention, it falls down. I then have to pick up 15 million pieces, start over, throw that away, start something else, that falls down. Not being mindful of your actions can, even the smallest things, can create a lot of problems.
That's a great point. I really like that way of stopping suffering. I never thought of when I run up the stairs and forget why I'm there as suffering, but I'm obviously not being mindful when I do that. Anyone else?
For me, mindfulness, when I'm being mindful, I don't interrupt people. I have a tendency to jump in to conversations. And there's nothing wrong with that, except there's a time and a place for it. And if you're in the middle of talking about something, being mindful, I should let you finish what you're talking about. And I have had the bad tendency to jump in with, oh yeah, I've done that, or blah, 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 blah. And so being mindful, I'm really trying to wait, not just till it's my turn, but just wait until it's appropriate, and being mindful of whether you're finished, whether I want to comment on what you were saying rather than sharing my stuff about it. So there's a whole lot of mindfulness practice for me that seems to be very important in my life right now. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Nancy. I like that. I like that, because one of the things, when I was reading, it talked about mindfulness is really listening to people when they're talking. And it's really easy if you're interrupting, at least for me, when I'm interrupting, it's usually because I'm thinking of what I want to say. I'm not truly listening to the people that are talking. So then I go, oh yeah, right, I want to say that. And so yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
So I have a question about staying in the present moment, because what is the relationship between the value of that And I mean, isn't there, so like in the present moment, I would like to have a glass of wine. But if I project even a short distance into the future, but I mean, really think it through about how I'd feel and what the ramifications of that would be, then I make a wiser choice. So, um, you know, I don't always know about the present moment. You know what I mean? I mean, sometimes the present moment for me feels a little tricky.
Well, I was thinking, like being in the present moment is not, for me, it's not what I would like. Um, like it's being in the present moment, whether you like the present moment or not. And if I'm thinking, well, I would like a glass of wine, I'm thinking really of the future. I would like to have a glass of wine.
Hmm.
But if I'm in the present moment doing whatever I'm doing, whether it's, like they talk about doing, um, you know, cooking an omelet there, and saying, and it's really easy for me to like say, okay, I'm going to cook an omelet, but I'm not thinking about the omelet. I'm thinking about, you know, um, what am I going to do after I finish cooking this omelet and eating it? You know, so and they talk about some people having um more they have more mindfulness because of what they do, like a surgeon better be concentrating on his surgery. He
Mhm.
better not be thinking about, you know, after the surgery he's going to go out and party.
Mhm.
um or a chef who's really into making a particular dish, or, but, a lot of us, a lot of times when I'm doing things, I'm not really thinking about the things that I'm doing. I'm thinking about, um, you know, maybe I'm cleaning house, but I'm not thinking about cleaning house. I'm thinking about after I finish cleaning house, I'm going to go for a hike. So that's the mindfulness should be concentrating on cleaning the house. And one of the things I thought of when I was doing the reading is that when I was new in sobriety, things bothered me a lot. And I would call people up and saying, oh, this and this and this is going on. This is horrible. And they would say things like, well, have you done the dishes? And I'd say, well, no, and then they would say, well, just go and do the dishes. So they would think of something that, is something that's just very routine to do. And I'm thinking, you can be mindful when you're washing the dishes, or you can not be mindful. But I think, thinking about what you would like. I mean, I would like not to be doing the dishes. I would like to be off having a drink or something. And, if I start thinking about that, then that's not being mindful. So that's kind of what I got from mindfulness, from being mindful, is being where you are in your mind as well as what you're doing.
Right. Well, I would never be one to question the value of being mindful. I mean, our whole practice is based on that. But I just sometimes wonder, like, for me, sometimes thinking about the consequence of a spontaneous action that I almost do, because it feels like something I want to do right now. But if I stop and just look 5 minutes into the future at the consequences of that. And so maybe the mindfulness in that comes in that pause, that pause that says, wait, think about the future for 5 minutes. Maybe that's what that is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would think that, like, maybe what are you doing when you think of would be nice to have a glass of wine? I mean, like, if you're like cooking dinner or sitting and relaxing, that might be, sitting in the living room and relaxing and think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a glass of wine? But see, that takes you out of the mindfulness of where you are.
Yeah, I think it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I guess it's a similar question to asking um, if I'm packing for a trip. That you are kind of looking into the future. What am I going to need? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be hot? So, I mean, maybe with the drinking example, it it the mindfulness is catching that thought and just
Mhm.
thinking that's a bad idea. It hardly matters what you're doing when you have the thought. It just
Yeah,
appears. So,
I actually
yeah.
appreciate what Penny was saying about what the AA people told her. Go do something, go do a household chore, do the dishes.
Mhm.
Because like you were talking about with the alcohol, I struggle with the same thing with eating. I cannot get back to what I was thinking about. I cannot return to what I was doing when the thought came up, because that just reminds me more of the intrusive thought to go do that. But doing a household chore, that's a very practical suggestion. Something that mindfulness can be put into. That's a really great idea.
thank you. That,
The thing
and
that
one thing, oh, go ahead.
the thing that is really really rose for me was there has been so much chaos, so much stress, so much just suffering going on really over the last 3 months. We've just really, with the election, wondering what was going to happen. Now it has happened. I felt myself just really kind of spiraling. I was just getting more and more angry. Forecasting, it was really not being in the moment. I was forecasting what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what are they going to do to us? My Head Start programs not going to have funding. It was just all the hate's going to be coming out, all these things. I was just really spiraling. And really, what it was I wasn't being in the moment. I was forecasting what's going to happen over the next 4 years. And I actually got up this morning and I was like, this is not being mindful. This is not doing anything to eliminate suffering, etc. And I went online today and I deleted Facebook. I deleted my CNN app. I deleted MSNBC today. I just was like, this is ridiculous. I just kind of sat with it for a little bit and thought, what can I do that's positive? And I just thought, if you really want to do something, donate to ACLU, do something like that. But it just, I was checking my phone all the time. It just was getting just really obnoxious. And so that whole connecting the mindfulness to being in the moment and just kind of thinking and feeling where you are right here and now. I really do have to say, if it wasn't for my practice, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that today. But after I did it, oh my gosh, it just felt amazing. It was like, no, you don't have to go look at your phone right now. You can go do the laundry. You can fold the laundry. You can do those household chores. And And you know that if you don't look at all that stuff tonight, when you go to bed, the same stuff's going to go on today if you're looking at it or not. So, individually, it definitely eliminated some suffering for me today, just being in the moment and being mindful of what was happening to me, my internal voice, what was happening to my body. My body was responding. I was tense. I kept telling myself, God, let your shoulders drop. You know, I'd go to bed and I could literally feel myself just have to tell myself, drop your shoulders. So it felt really good to just kind of realize that today and have that awareness. So
Piggybacking on that commentary, I'm right there with you. I've noticed that about myself too, just kind of letting things, first of all, we're going to find out the news no matter what. It doesn't have to be from Facebook but then the other thing that I kind of realized is, so a friend of mine on Facebook posted a link to a subreddit where only AI bots could post and respond. And so when you look at the subreddit, it's like, it just looks like Twitter. Like it just looks, it looks like something you would just see on Twitter, on Twitter. Like it doesn't look any different, and it made me wonder, like, how do I know? I mean, what if everything I'm reading on, I don't look at Twitter anymore, but like Threads is like the new one. What if everything I see on Threads isn't even a real person? What if it's just like bots that are throwing out these things to like create rage in people, just to kind of make people mad, and I don't know. It's like I'm getting mad at things that don't really exist. Like it's just like, so it's crazy. So yeah, I think that's a smart idea. Just deleting the social media, just deleting those things that stir up those emotions that get you out of the present moment, because we're going to, no matter what happens, I mean, we're going to experience it in some way, and it doesn't have to be, we don't have to experience it in our heads before the fact. I mean, and maybe it won't happen the way we're experiencing it in our heads. Who knows? But I think it's better to be, to cultivate mindfulness and be able to, react, just not react, but just be present in the moment and be able to sort of present yourself, with, in the way to present yourself with whatever is going to be coming towards you, just like in a wise way, like instead of just reacting to bots on the internet. I don't know. Anyway.
I really appreciate what both of you said. And there's a paragraph that, goes along with the suffering and mindfulness. And it says, right mindfulness involves no such goals or desires. It's simply seeing, or better, being what is happening and paying attention, whether we like what's happening or not. Bam. We don't practice right mindfulness to know ourselves better or to become kinder or more peaceful people. We practice it for its own sake, in the faith that through the practice, we'll come to see how our mind and heart create suffering and happiness, and will naturally choose happiness.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of makes me teary-eyed reading that after listening to you guys.
Beautiful, Penny. What quote is that from?
So,
Is that Thich Nhat Hanh?
no, that was, I mean, I don't know where he got it, but it was Norman Fisher.
Oh, beautiful.
I really liked the stuff, the stuff that he wrote. It was kind of a synopsis of a lot of people's stuff, so. It just. And it was helpful because, one of the things, how does mindfulness and suffering? Well, it's, we look at things we're here in the present, and we're not doing what you guys were talking about, reading the news and anticipating what's going to happen, because we don't know. And it's so easy to read stuff and go, oh no, this is horrible. But we don't really know how it's going to affect everybody. So, and
I
I'm
also,
guilty of doing that, so.
yeah, the news is
Norman
designed to.
Norman Fisher is good, and I read this book by the Zen person who started the hospice place in San Francisco, and his name is Frank Ostaszewski. He wrote 5 Invitations. That's the name of that book, and my friend just calls him Frank O. But someone asked him there, well, what's the value of practicing mindfulness? And he said if it starts to become a practice where you do it as regularly as you can, he said it makes you a better listener, whatever situation, you're maybe suddenly confronted with. And unfortunately, in a way, I think mindfulness has become a buzzword in the media, the wider press. But I know corporations, if they want to tag somebody in their scheme, like maybe a high-end or an employee mid-level, they'll say, well, you have a problem, go get mindfulness training. Like, they don't want to deal with you, so they can make you kind of the person with the problem, which of course could be a good thing, because maybe you don't like the yucky place you're working for. But I think mindfulness is just some ways, little ways of getting the most, in a way, out of our life, our energy, and not beating ourselves up, if we forget. If I'm having a great time, I was mindful. That's why I was having a great time. But every time I get miffed about something, it's because my head isn't where it's most useful and productive.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. I really like things that you say. That was good.
Sometimes I think just even being mindful, when I think about all the stuff that has kind of just really had me spiraling. I think back when I, 15 years ago, when I became vegan, when I decided to give up meat. When I very first started, I was watching all those videos, those gruesome videos of trying to, when I was learning what was happening to all the animals, because I didn't know, I really had that wall up, I never connected the two. And so when I very first started and was being exposed to all those things that were happening to the animals and became vegan, it didn't take me too long before I went, I don't need to see any of that anymore. I don't need to hear any of that anymore. I know what's going on out there. I don't have to have it infiltrate my psyche, my vision, lay in bed and see those visuals anymore. And it's kind of like the same thing that's going on right now. It's kind of like porn, people that get addicted to porn. It's like expose theirself over and over and over to it. And you really do have to ask yourself, why do I need to see that? Why do I need to hear this all day? Why do I need to be scrolling through Facebook or social media and having the news in my face all day, and everybody's fears, everybody's afraid, all their fears, they're just, this is what's going to happen. And so it kind of feels like that is the same for me. Way back when I was looking at all those horrible videos, I still am vegan and I don't need to see all that anymore. And I know that all that stuff's going on out there right now, but I really don't have to immerse myself in it. I know if a bomb's dropped, somebody's going to tell me, somebody's going to tell me if we go into a war or something, somebody will text me or call me or whatever. So that's kind of what it reminds me, just being mindful of what we are exposing ourselves to every day, no matter what it is, what we're letting kind of just filter into us every day. It really adds to the suffering and the things that we have no control over.
Joanne raises a very good point there. One of the things I've noticed is that whatever you consume, whether it's video games, books, Facebook, that actually makes it into your consciousness. It actually, when you try to sleep, it will come back. It will pattern your dreams. It will take over your life, whether or not you know it. One of the things that I've noticed in my own life as a writer is that I will go in and submerge myself in the fandom, and then my brain will get enough of that media to start working it over in the back of my head, and it will come out not just in the form of dreams, but in stories too. So whatever it is we take in is also in it envelops is the wrong word, but fills us up. It by taking in all that information about animals being killed, we end up filling ourselves up with the animals being killed rather than a sense of compassion. Well, we have to be real. That's one of the things to be really mindful about is what is it we're taking in. John makes a great point.
Yeah, it makes me think about Ukraine because I have correspondence with the woman who took us to Ukraine. And of course, she's worried about what's going to happen. But as she says, there's nothing she can do about what's going to happen. So she just keeps on doing her fundraising and her um her, her different, she just has finished a thing called Pause for Ukraine with dogs. I don't know what they're doing, but it's a fundraiser for Ukraine. But she just keeps doing that rather than worrying about what might happen. So
what you're saying really sounds like using the serenity prayer again of if I'm staying mindful in the present moment, my life is really good, but there are things that, going on and I can change some things, but there's so much that I can't change. I'm being mindful. I can be aware that no, that's not anything that I can do anything about. I can let that go. I can be mindful about it. And then I can focus on, yes, maybe I do want to help dogs or something like that. There is something that I can change and not that it's going to be in the future, but what can I do right now? And what I can always do right now is be mindful right now, present moment awareness. And for me, coming back to the serenity prayer, just, God, I use that 100 times a day. Just trying to think of, is it something I need to do now? Or do I need to just let it go in the present moment? Yeah.
Could you say the serenity prayer just as a reminder? Somebody, well, I can't hear you because you're muted.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's on one hand. The courage to change the things I can, which is the other hand, and the wisdom to know the difference. So everything's either I can change it or I can't. It always comes back to one or the other, and the wisdom to know the difference. And if I'm present, centered, mindful, then that's going to be the wisdom to know which way I'm going. Yeah.
Very good.
Buddhism also, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Ruth Ann, go ahead.
Buddhism also uses the don't know mind. It took 18 years for people on the Oregon coast to stop the refinery going in. Jordan Cove was the name of that's where they were going to put it. And like farmers worked with environmentalists, 18 years. And finally, the company gave up asking for permits because people kept fighting them. So sometimes we really don't know. And I reminded my friends last week in their early 20s, I said, get involved, something about the climate. You don't have to be in the street, but educate yourself because if we use the don't know mind and work in a social way for a right mindful goal, you don't know. I mean, so Greta Thunberg says it's never too late to do as much as we can. And I think, okay, even keeping possibilities on our screen.
I'm reading Rebecca Solnit's book, Hope in the Dark. And I just finished this first chapter of it this morning. And I can't quote her because I don't have it sitting right in front of me, but she talks about this scenario back in the 60s or sometime back in the day. These ladies were protesting something in Washington, D.C. And I can't remember what it was. But the lady, one of the ladies who was protesting was talking about how it was raining out and she didn't feel like it was really producing any result, she kind of felt, a little hopeless standing there in the rain, protesting this, whatever it was they were protesting. But is it Dr. Spock? He was an activist. I think it was him she was talking about. And he became an activist for this particular thing that they were protesting. He was like one of the biggest activists for this. And the way that he got involved was he saw these women protesting in the rain. And he said, well, if they're out there on this day doing this, then I can put more effort into my activism. And so he became like this really huge activist for this particular cause. And if he hadn't seen them out there doing that, he wouldn't have had that thought or that, desire to put more effort into what he. So it's kind of interesting. It's like you don't know what, how your action is going to affect others, and yeah.
I think it goes to that wisdom that you're saying in the prayer. So many times we think that, kind of like back to the Facebook, we're sharing something, and you're sitting there thinking that okay, I'm focusing on the change part, what I can change, but really that's not they've probably seen that thing shared 100 times. It's really kind of checking yourself too, having the wisdom in, am I really changing something, accepting the things that I can't change and just walking away from it, or having enough wisdom to know what you're doing really is producing some kind of positive change. I think sometimes it is kind of hard, kind of like those women in the rain. They're kind of thinking, I'm not really changing anything, but something did change. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out, have that wisdom to tell if what you're doing is making any positive change in the world.
You know, I find it interesting talking about the wisdom, because, you know, mindfulness is the mental discipline, but it affects the, you know, the other category. One of the other ones is wisdom, which is right view and right intention. And so all these things, you know, it's the other things that we've been talking about, but they're all intermeshed in that. And, you know, so mindfulness affects the wisdom of, you know, of this practice. So, you know, I really like that you've talked about that. And Shokai and, you know, the men, we haven't heard from the men. Do you guys have anything you want to say, Rick or Shokai?
I figured you've been hearing my snoring, and I'm absolutely, my mind is very not effective today. I'm enjoying being in the presence of the conversation, but I can't add much to it.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
And Shokai, do you have anything?
I was thinking of reading body language as much as verbal language, and that the mindfulness there is like listening. And it's a good idea, because otherwise you might step on something that is hurtful.
I really found what you said, Dixie, to be helpful. That a way to think of how mindfulness and suffering is to think of the consequences, all the consequences of not being mindful in 100 ways causes suffering.
Yeah, I thought of that too.
Yeah, so that was a really helpful way to look at that.
Well, we have 1 minute, so you know, I've really appreciated what people have said. Thank you so much. You know, it's been a really good discussion. Everybody.
Thank you, Penny, for introducing this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
Or Zoom hosting, John.
Thanks, Penny. Boldness pays off.
Does somebody want to do the closing verse for us?
The lotus is not wetted by the water that surrounds it, so the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha.
All Buddhas,
Buddhas throughout space and
space
time,
and
Time,
all
all
honored
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 ones,
ones,
bodhisattvas,
bodhisattvas,
mahasattvas,
mahasattvas,
wisdom beyond wisdom,
wisdom,
maha
maha
prajna
Prajna
paramita.
Paramita. Okay. Peace.
Thank you, Penny, and everyone.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
everyone.
everybody.
It's
Bye.
great seeing everyone.